So we just completed the last day of Podcast Movement Evolutions in Viva Las Vegas. I am sitting here because my flight leaves in 6 hours. So I wanted to share with you some of my biggest takeaways. And one of the things I want to share with you today is that podcasting and these podcasting events can be so overwhelming, but it doesn't have to. I've heard it time and time again during the last 3 days of, this might not be for me. No wonder my show's not working. I'm overwhelmed. I have to do so much more. And I don't believe that you truly have to do more and live in this overwhelm to have a successful podcast. But there are some things you can do to make it easier. So let's go.
Welcome to the podcast about podcasting, where you guessed it, we're talking all things podcasting, but not just in the sense of strategy of how to launch, grow, and monetize your show. Of course, you're going to get that, but we're going deep into how podcasting can actually help you build your community, build your confidence, and if you're willing to lean deep into this platform, it can be the ticket to the life of your dreams, because it'll inspire you to go deeper, to get to know yourself. And as we know, success starts from within. If you are ready to stop being a ripple in this world and bust out your tsunami of change you know you were made for, it's podcasting for your soul. I'm your host, Jen Dragonette, so let's dig in.
So I know that part of my cure for pod fade has to be getting rid of this overwhelm. I have heard it time and time again, from day 1 to day 2 to just having a conversation at lunch, that this platform is overwhelming. I think that what we need to really back up and analyze here is overwhelming versus work. I want to put in the realistic expectation that podcasting takes work. If you build it, they will not come. You must put in the work. You must create good content. You must share your podcast. You must get out into the world so that you can show up in other people's spaces. Can you do this with SEO alone? I believe to a certain extent you can. This show, The Cure for Pod Fade, is proof of that. For the first 6 months of this show, I did not do any sharing. Well, that's not true. I posted once on Facebook, once on Instagram, and I think I posted 2 pins on Pinterest. I did nothing more but spend hours and days down the SEO rabbit hole. What that did for me is show me that with SEO alone, I was able to get up to around 150 downloads per episode. Mind you, remember, I did not share on any other platforms other than those very few times that I just mentioned. So does SEO work? Yeah. And I wasn't doing a blog at that time. I was just doing podcast SEO. So now I'm taking things to the next level and I'm adding blogs. I'm starting to add some of these other things to grow. I did pay for some ads, and ads, if you want a fast growth and you want to get out of pod fade, you should get some ads. They don't always work. They are kind of costly in the cost per listener or cost per acquisition. But man, my numbers went up and you guys are still sticking around. So hey, thanks if it's you that came from an ad. I appreciate you. But what I see is that we go to these events. We go to Google University. We go from coach to coach to coach, and everyone is telling us something different. We need to learn to trust our intuition, and we need to start slowly. So I went to a couple of events, and I think I mentioned this in the last episode, was that a couple of them had 5 or 6 ideas for people. Each one of those takes a ton of time. Yes, there's some shortcuts like Capsho, and I don't call it really a shortcut because you still have to work to edit the copy, but Capsho is amazing if you want to start getting on other platforms to actually be able to show up, get found without having to be a slave. What Capsho is an AI software for specifically podcasters, and it helps you show up in all the different places by creating your copy that you just have to go through and copy edit, so you're not starting from a blank page. But what I see And I see this everywhere. I see this no matter where I search, how to grow my podcast. And you get lists of like 10 to 15 things. You get people saying, okay, you need to share on social media 1,000,000 times. So post it in your main feed, post it in your stories, go live, share a little tidbit about the episode. Now create a reel, now create a TikTok. Now, don't forget, you've got to create Pinterest posts, but we should be pinning 3 times a day. Oh, and then don't forget that LinkedIn is the #1 places that podcasts are showing up and actually growing their show in the social media land. So now you got to learn LinkedIn. Oh, did you write your newsletter this week, by the way? Oh, did you create an actual captivating blog and optimize it for SEO? Holy freaking smokes. It's overwhelming. And yes, podcasting is work. And I want you to be able to distinguish between the two, whether it's work or it's overwhelm. What happens is we try to take on too many things at once and we become scattered. These people that say you can multitask, well, we can to an extent, but your brain has to fire up for each task. It has to fire up for one task, then it's got to fire up for the other task and go back and forth. So realistically, you're not doing 2 tasks at once. Your brain is firing twice, which can feel exhausting. So when you are doing all of these things half-assed and you are not putting in the effort to master one thing, master maybe 2 things, what happens is you've spread yourself so thin, you're not showing up to do any of these things well. You're creating content just because you have to. You're starting to have to push it out and push it out and push it out. And that energy attracts energy. I hate to tell you, whether you're woo, not woo, spiritual, energy attracts energy. When you are exhausted and burnt out and frustrated, do you think people are going to want to come to you and be like, hey, I want to pay you to work with you? No. No. And that's why there were quite a few speakers, including Judy Fox, hashtag Judy Fox Rocks, or I think it's just Fox Rocks on LinkedIn. But she had one specific platform and she made it so stinking simple to be like, oh yeah, okay, I see why this is an effective platform. I see why this makes sense. And the cool thing about Judy was that she wasn't up there just constantly selling her thing. I don't even know if she mentioned, other than she was a LinkedIn expert, that she had a way to work with her. There was ways to connect, but she just gave. And I think that is one of the things that we are afraid of that leads to overwhelm is we're sitting there backing down our content, thinking about, oh, how much am I willing to give? Okay, I'll give 75% away so that I have this 25%. And you spend a lot of time and effort thinking that. I think some of the overwhelm also comes from comparison. And I fall into this all the time. I've looked around. This event has been an eye-opener for me because I do have opinions and I have stepped into my inner authority and I have been willing to share. And then as soon as I share and I go back to my room and I sit by myself for a minute, I'm like, Jennifer, how did you just say that? These people have been in the industry. These people have better results. These people have this. They probably think you're crazy. They probably think you're stupid. Oh my goodness, blah, 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 blah. That takes a lot of energy, which adds to the overwhelm. And the reason that I'm sharing this with you is because I want you to see that it's more than just a content problem when you're having overwhelm. It's not just you not knowing what to create, not knowing what to post, not knowing how to show up on all the platforms. You have an internal struggle that is also scaring the crap out of you and causing your brain to work hard to keep yourself going forward. So what I want you to do to get out of this overwhelm is I want you to truly think about where your people are, what your mission is. It all goes back to that core value. Number 1, if you are going to have a podcast, you've got to be consistent. You might not see the fruits of your hard labor until 6 months, maybe a year. Mine happened 18 months in. 18 months in, all of a sudden, I was able to start generating a ton of income from my show. And it is actually at probably around a year, it became 50% of my income. Around that 18-month mark, 90% of my income comes from my podcasts. And if I would have given up on episode 7 or episode 30, like most podcasters do, when I was only getting 30 downloads an episode, I would have missed out on this beautiful opportunity to let it blossom into something. Remember, podcasting is legacy. Legacy. My episodes from my other show, before I even turned into a podcast junkie, podcast expert, whatever you want to call me, my episodes when I was a chronic pain coach still get people on my email list. I still have the freebie up from there, and I can see when people are coming in from the show, because I don't do that anymore. They grab my freebie and then my freebie doesn't go anywhere, but at least they get that access and it's still growing. It takes time, and you've got to have some pretty big girl panty, big boy panties on to make this work, because you do put a lot of time and effort in, and you're like, okay, this is really hard. But it doesn't have to be as hard as you're making it. You just need to stay in your lane. So for me, I am going all in on podcasting. Like, podcasting is my number one. I write outlines. I come up with ideas. Right now we're shooting from the hip because we're in Vegas waiting for an airplane. But normally I give myself a tiny outline so that I don't go too far off course. I'll have to do an episode for you on how I repurpose content. But I truly start there. Then I build my content from there. I do use an AI software, again, Capsho, to help me with some of the copy. I've tried to hire copy editors. I've tried to hire copywriters. It just hasn't worked as well as AI spitting out something and then me rewriting it in my own tone and in my own voice. That has been the most helpful, and it has saved me a ton of time. It's also allowed me to create things like LinkedIn articles, because I believe now, after coming to this event and listening to Deidre, there was a report done on the high earning podcasters, those high impact podcasters that are making a ton of money from their show. And where they're showing up the most is blog posts, newsletters, and LinkedIn. The other ones that I see are taking off and have kind of been optimized for podcasters to grow and make money is TikTok and YouTube. I believe that those platforms are where you should start showing up, because the other ones just aren't getting the results. And this was from a conference of thousands and thousands of podcasters with the leading experts on stage. Yes, once you have a warm audience, is it easier to connect and to nurture a relationship maybe on the metaverse? Yeah. But that's not a great place to convert your followers to listeners. TikTok is going to be coming out with something for podcasters. We don't know what it is yet. LinkedIn is optimized for podcasters, and YouTube is optimized for podcasters. You also want to have your eggs in your own basket, which is why I say your podcast, your blog, and your newsletter. So of all of those, which one can you start adding? Are you willing to cut loose with a little bit of money and maybe try Capsho, so that Capsho can help you create that content, because it helps you create the copy for TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, blog posts, LinkedIn articles, show notes, like all the things. And then you just tune it up a little to be you. But it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And you don't have to do it all at once. And you don't have to do all the things. Just think about one platform that's all yours outside of podcasting. So maybe that's podcasting and a blog, or podcasting and your newsletter. Then I want you to think about one social avenue, whether that's TikTok, LinkedIn, or if you're going to try metaverse, go for it. And that's it. That's where I want you to focus. I want you to start taking the overwhelm out. I want you to put those blinders on and not listen to every single coach that's out there that's telling you have to be in all these places. And don't give up, because podcasting does take time. But let me tell you, the fruit is worth it. You need to plant the seeds, and you need to nurture that plant so that it grows. So if you are willing to come and do that, you want some support, come hang out inside the community. March 27th, we are starting a 5-day profitable podcast CPR bootcamp where we are going to resuscitate your business and your podcast so that you can have clarity on your purpose, your people, and your passions so that you can revive your revenue. All the information is in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing you there. So go out, make today amazing because you are beautiful, you are wonderful, you are worthy. So go do the things. And I am going to go catch an airplane.